Old horror movies. Who doesn't like old horror movies? Well, unless you don't like old horror movies, but then you have an issue. But really, there's something magical about booting up an old movie, whether it be you see it on TV for the first time, whether you've known about it your whole life, whether you own it on Blu-ray. There's just something about it. When you pop in that disc, maybe it's an older film from the 30s, the 40s, 50s, maybe it's in black and white, maybe it's from the 70s, maybe it's a giallo, maybe it's a slasher, but there's just some kind of magic there, and you just gravitate towards it, and you really like it. Now, if you can relate to this, then chances are you're a fan of old horror movies. But why are you a fan of old horror movies? Maybe you think about it a lot, maybe you've never sat there and thought about it, I guess. But there's some kind of magic there. Now, I'm young. I'm only 23. I didn't grow up with any of these movies at all. I saw all of these movies probably past the age of 14, 15. So the nostalgia I have for them isn't very much, and I never grew up with them. But even so, I still love them. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying new movies are bad, because they obviously aren't, and that's obviously not true. There's a lot of good stuff that does come out. Maybe I'll put some pictures on the screen right now of what those are. Wink, wink, malignant. But anyway, I just think there's something special about old movies, really. I mean, specifically old horror movies. Now, when you're talking about a movie that's not in color, and it's a horror movie, oh my god, it changes everything. The way you play with light and dark, it's completely different, because that's all you have, and it's honestly amazing. Some of my favorite horror movies are black and white. Night of the Living Dead, easily one of my favorite movies. Top 1 or 2, 3 zombie movie of all time. Movies like Frankenstein still hit today and still resonate with me so much. And I'm not sure why, but they do. And they really do hit. And I feel like you can honestly feel the passion and the fact that people really put effort into it. Some people will sit there and say that they don't like black and white movies. And it's alright, fair enough, but I just don't think you're giving it enough of a shot, or I don't think you're giving it a fair chance. Just because it's in black and white does not mean it's lesser than color. Movies like Frankenstein, Dracula, Bride of Frankenstein, Night of the Living Dead, Black Sunday, all these movies are in black and white, and they're better than just about any movie that comes out today. Now, I can't answer for you necessarily why you think that old horror movies are so good or potentially better than new ones, but I can't answer for myself, and I just think that there's so much that goes into them versus today where it's just kind of a studio afterthought. Not that they weren't studio commercialized movies back then either, but it was you could really feel everything that goes into it. And you had some of these actors like Bela Lugosi and people like him putting their all into the roles and making it resonate with people 100 years almost on later. That really says something, honestly. And it's not like it's just black and white movies. If you go forward to color, once you start getting into the 70s and stuff like that, you have great movies there too. And then you get to the 80s, you have great movies there again. You want to talk about feeling the director and the passion behind the projects? Just go to giallo movies, bro. The way that they direct those movies and inject them with great camera work, great lighting, cool stories about murder and thrillers and freaking white gloves, it's all amazing. And honestly, today you just don't really see that. All you really see, at least in American cinema, is just, oh, here's the next haunted ghost movie. Oh, zombie movies are back in now? Oh, let's do a zombie movie. Stuff like that. Now we have the renaissance of slasher movies, which are we're doing remakes right now, which is okay. Maybe we'll get some new ones. I love the remakes that we're getting, yes. But if we start getting new ideas and slashers, I would love that. But it just doesn't seem to be the case. We're going to get remakes and stuff like that, just because obviously these old movies have stood the test of time because people are still talking about them and still watching them, and they're still in their minds enough where they think that they can make money by bringing them back because everyone knows it and everyone is still familiar with it. Honestly, I feel like part of the reason that horror just isn't the same anymore is that it's just changed forever after the 90s, really. I mean, horror was almost dying in the 90s. Scream didn't just revitalize slasher movies, it revitalized horror in general and made it cool to do horror again. And obviously you had great movies since then, but back in the 70s and 80s, people were focusing on horror movies. Directors and studios, they wanted to make horror movies, especially the 80s, where everyone was trying to make slasher movies and horror movies. People wanted to make horror movies. Nowadays, you don't really get that. You just have the studio horror film, and that's really it. It's not like people are jumping to make new horror movies today. Really, I just don't think horror has been the same since the 90s. We might see another renaissance of just incredible horror movies with fantastic directors and new ideas. Who knows? But as of right now, it's just, you're getting a lot of the same stuff, and that's basically it. They don't want to take too many risks. Versus back in the 80s where they were doing crazy stuff all the time. This isn't a knock on new horror movies at all. It's just there's something special about old horror movies. You and I know it if you're watching this video probably, but they're just amazing. Yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video of me just talking about old horror movies and new horror movies. Yeah, it'd be very appreciated if you just hit that like button and think about subscribing. Yeah, thank you.